Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 2 of my SQLite video tutorial. Today I'm going to go over how we would be able to create SQLite databases as well as tables. And I'm going to show you a whole bunch of shortcut ways to generate a whole bunch of insert statements so you don't have to type raw data into your database. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so this is the data that we're going to have, and what we're going to have here is a database with a whole bunch of superheroes in it and superhero powers. Now, as you can see, here is a whole mess of different types of general superpowers that a superhero or a supervillain can have, like mind control, possession, psionic blast, and so forth and so on. What we're going to need to do is put this in alphabetical order so it's a little bit easier to read. And then what we're going to need to do is match up all of these general type superpowers with the superheroes or villains themselves. So here we have Tony Stark and he is Iron Man. So we're going to have all of that information in another table. And then we're going to have specific power information. The very first ID right here is actually going to reference these general powers up here, as well as those general power descriptions. And then also in that table, we're going to have more specific information in regards to our very specific superhero. And then what we're going to do is take the identities, which is going to be represented with 1, 2, 3, 4. This column right here is going to represent the IDs for the superheroes themselves. And then these are going to be very specific powers. So for example, if this is Iron Man, then in this situation, 1 is going to represent the first item in this column, which is going to be specific to Iron Man's power to shoot pulse bolts. And then 2 is going to be specific to 34, which is going to be a reference to the general superpower of super speed. And then this is going to be Iron Man's top speed, and 95 is going to be a reference to the general superpower of super strength. And then 90 tons is going to be the specific amount of weight he can pick up. So that is what this table is going to do. And if you haven't quite gathered all that, don't worry, all the code is available in the link under the description. And I'm going to be covering this stuff numerous times, so you'll get it by the end. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create the table, which is going to have all the general superpowers. And I have a little tool here called Umlet. As you can see right here, I've used it previously. It's a free plugin for Eclipse, and it allows us to create things like these descriptions for the tables in our database. Now, like I said before, we're going to have a general power. And if you can't see this, view it full screen, but I'm going to make most of this in a text editor. So that's going to be general power, and then I'm going to add all the other columns underneath of it. And I'm going to do that over here. So we are going to have an ID, which is going to be an integer, which is going to be a primary key, which just means that it's going to auto increment and make sure that we have unique values inside of there. Then we're going to have power type, which is going to be the name of the general superpower. And then we're going to have general power description, which is going to be a description for the general type superpower. So now that we have all of those set up, we can bounce over here and we can select this and we can paste that in over here. And now you can see that we have all that information for our table for our database. So now what we're going to do is go and grab another one of these and create another one. So this is the one we created just now, this great big giganto thing. And now we're going to create the table that is going to represent the secret identity as well as the superhero's name, or whatever you want to say. And this guy is going to be called identity, right like that, just as you can see right there. Then I'm going to create all the columns for it as well. So we are also going to have an ID, which is going to be a primary key, which is going to be a unique number that is going to represent our superheroes, and they're going to have a secret identity, and it's going to be of type text. And we're also going to have character, which is going to be the superhero or villain's name. And we're just going to copy that out of there, and this is just going to provide us with everything in a nice organized manner, because here in a second we're going to show how these different tables are going to relate to each other. And then let's just come in here and we're going to create another one. And the next one we're going to create is going to be the specific or more elaborate information on this specific power for each hero. And this guy is just going to be called power. And then inside of the power table, again, I'm going to have an ID that's going to be a primary key. I am also going to reference the general power type ID, and this is going to be known as a foreign key, and all that means is it's a reference to a primary key in another table. And we'll get more into that as time goes by. And then we're going to have power description, which is going to be a more specific explanation of the power for the superhero. And of course we can just come in here and paste that in there. and then I'm going to take identity, move it down here, grab power, move it over here, and then I'm going to point to the fact that the primary key here is referenced by power type ID inside of the power table. See? So that is how they are going to be linked together. So bounce out of that. Now we got 3 of them set up, and now we just need a 4th one. Now the 4th one is going to pull everything together. It's going to have the identity for the superhero, and it's going to have all the specific types of powers that that superhero is going to have. So let's bounce back over into the side of this guy, and this one I'm just going to call superhuman, right like that. And then inside of superhuman, we're not going to have a primary key this time. I'm actually going to put identity ID, and it is going to be an integer, and like I said before, it's going to be a reference to the ID inside of the identity table. And then I'm going to have power ID underscore 1, which is going to be an integer, and I'm going to have a couple of these guys. I'm going to have 3 of them, and then I'm just going to name this 2 and 3, just like that. And then we can grab this, copy it, paste it inside of this, grab this. And for now, I'm not going to link all the individual power IDs. I'm just going to keep this nice and simple right now. So here we are going to show the link between the identity table as well as the identity ID, which is over here. Like I said, this is known as a primary key. This is known as a foreign key. All right. So now what we need to do is actually create all of these tables inside of our database. And we're going to go SQLite3, and I'm going to call this superhumans.tb. And there we are. And tables is going to show that there are no tables currently created inside of it. Then what I need to do is create the table. So I'm going to go create table, and I'm going to go general power, and I need an ID, which is going to be an integer, primary key, and basically just copying everything from the left side of the screen over to the right. And then I'm going to need power type, which is going to be text, which is going to be the power's name. And then I'm going to have general power description, which is also going to be of type text, and then close that off, and it has been created, as you can see right there. So there's general power. Next thing I need to do is come in and create the identity table, and it is also going to have an ID, which is going to be an integer, which is going to be a primary key, and it's going to have the secret identity, which is going to be of type text. And then it's going to have character, which is going to be the superhero's name, and it's also going to be of type text, and there we go. And if we type in tables, you can see that general power and identity are both created. Alright, so let's just keep on creating tables. So let's create another table, of course. Create table, this is going to be the specific power, which we called power. There's integer, primary key, and we're going to have power type ID, which is going to be a foreign key reference, which you're going to see in a second how to set up a foreign key. And then we're going to have power description, which is going to be the specific description for that said guy. And then we're going to jump down here to the next line. You don't have to jump down to the next line, just decided to. And I'm going to say foreign key. And it doesn't matter this whole thing with uppercase or lowercase, just something I chose to do. Then whenever you're creating a foreign key, you're going to define what is the foreign key inside of this. Well, power type ID is the foreign key. And I can see I made a little slip up here in regards to this. Actually, let's just exit out. That's going to throw a syntax error. And I accidentally jumped out of the thing. No big deal. And there we are. We're back inside of it. Tables. And there we go. General and identity. And it did not create the power one yet. So I'm just going to come in here, grab this guy, paste that inside of it. And I'm going to jump down in the next line just to show you can do that. And I'm going to say power type underscore ID. Spell integer right this time. And then I'm going to say power description, which is type text, and then I'm going to jump down in the next line again, and here I'll type in foreign key using lowercase, doesn't matter. And then here we reference what is a foreign key. We're going to type in power type ID, and then we're going to say references, and we're going to say what specific table. It's going to be general underscore power is the table we're going to reference, and ID is going to be the specific thing we're referencing. Boom, no errors, and tables. And there we go. We have those all set up as well. And Shima is going to put all the information out there on the screen in regards to how it was created, like that. Okay, pretty cool. So now what we have to do is create our last table, and that's going to pull in the identity with all the individual superpowers. Create table, superhuman, and here we're going to have identity, ID, which is going to be another foreign key like I said before, and then we're going to have power underscore ID underscore 1, which is going to be an integer, and then we're going to have power underscore ID underscore 2, which is going to be an integer as well. Jump down to the next line just to keep everything neat. Power ID underscore 3, which is also going to be an integer. Spell integer right. There we go. And then after I have that set up, remember I have another foreign key that I need to create inside of this. So let's go foreign key, and I'm going to say identity. ID is the name of it. And then I'm going to say references identity, which is the name of the table that I'm going to be referencing. ID is the very specific part of the table. And there we go. And now we have all of our tables created for us. And there are all of them, all in one place. So now that we have our tables all generated, the next thing we need to do is to populate them with insert statements. So let's look at that and figure out exactly how that needs to be done. Remember, you don't want to type in all this stuff. It's just a mess. But the very first thing I want to be able to do here is actually come in and put all this information in alphabetical order. And since I was recently asked how to do that, how to turn a multidimensional array into alphabetical order, I'm going to get to show you that. What we're going to use is the arrays sort tool. And what this is going to do is sort the array based on the order that is going to be specified based off of the thing called a comparator, which you're going to see here in a second. And of course we're going to be sorting the array in this situation based off of the power's name and not the description, because that wouldn't make much sense. So the very first thing we're going to be sorting here is going to be this gigundo thing, and it's going to be called superpower array. So let's just copy that, come down inside of here and paste it. And then we want to sort it in a very interesting way. So we're going to say comparator, and we are going to be sorting a string array. And then after this, these braces here, put a curly brace, 1, 2, 3, come down here, put a semicolon. Now this guy is going to throw an error because it's going to say we need to implement an unimplemented method. As you see, click on it, there we are. And then inside of this, we're going to define exactly how these different items are going to be compared to each other. So I'm going to be comparing power 1 to power 2. And all that means is, scroll up here, the very first thing we're going to compare is power augmentation to power bestowal, or bestowal, or whatever. So those two are going to be compared to each other. So we have to define exactly what that means down inside of this guy, and then it's going to handle everything magically for us. It's absolutely kind of cool, actually. So what we're going to do, we're just going to come in here and just go return, and then we're going to go power 1, and then we're going to go 0, and then we're going to say compare to, put inside of this power 2, 0, like that. File save it, and it is going to work. And the way this is going to work is power 1, which is just going to be the first power in the list, and power 2 is going to be the second one that we're going to be comparing to each other. And what it's going to do is it's going to compare power 1 to power 2, and in the situation in which power 1 is greater than or equal to power 2, then power 1 is going to be compared to the next power that follows after power 2, or power 3 in the list. If, however, power 1 is less than power 2, then power 2 is going to be compared to the next power that follows it, and so forth and so on. And if you would want this to go into reverse alphabetical order, you just change this to power 2 and change this to power 1, but that's just silly because I don't want to do that. And there we go, and now we're going to have all this set up. Now what we're going to be able to do, just this little tiny bit of code just went and sorted that whole entire array. And I'm going to show you here proof of that. I'm just going to go for string, like that, item, and then the array's name itself, and then inside of this we're going to go, well actually, system out, and then I'm going to say item plus, and then inside of this I'm going to go 0, and then inside of this we're going to go item 1 like that. And if we execute it and come down here in the console, and you can see that everything is in alphabetical order, as you can see right there. So pretty cool. So that's how you go in and sort multi-dimensional arrays, but we don't need this. Our goal here is to generate all the insert statements that we're going to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go superpowers, which is the name of this class, and I'm going to call this superpower tools, new superpowers. And this is just a quick and dirty way to solve this problem of generating all these insert statements so we don't have to type them in. So I'm just going to call this generate insert statements, and what's going to get passed inside of this is going to be this array, superpower array right here. Come down here, paste that in there. Then after that we're going to put general power, which is the name for the table, general power. Power type is going to be the name for the very specific column as you saw previously. And then general power description is going to be the last part of that. So there we are. Now I just need to generate insert statements. I'm going to do that down here. Public void boink generate insert statements. And then the very first thing we're going to have inside of this is going to be a string multi-dimensional array. It's going to get passed inside of it, and I'm just going to call that the array like that. Then here we're going to have another string, and this is going to be the table name itself. Here we're going to have another string, and this is going to represent I'm just going to call this cell name 1, and then we're going to have another string, and it's going to represent what I'm going to call cell name 2. There we go. Doink, doink. Now this guy's going to spit out all those statements. And guess what? I'm going to do kind of the same thing that I did before to print out that information. String, item, the array was passed in, system out, and then here I'm just going to create the insert statement. So it's going to be insert into, and then we're going to put in our table name, which is what we're going to be inserting into, plus, and then we're going to put bracket here, plus, jump down to the next line, keep this nice and neat. Then I'm going to say cell name 1 plus, boink, and you're going to see here in a second exactly what this is going to generate, plus cell name 2 plus, close off that bracket. And immediately after this, we're going to type in values, and then the values that we're going to put in here specifically. And since these are both going to be strings, it's going to be pretty easy. And now I'm going to say item 0 plus single quote space, put another single quote. Then right after this, I'm going to say item bracket 1 plus, put a little bracket there, a single quote, da 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 da, to close off that command. And guess what? Everything is all set up. I don't see any errors, so let's execute it. And there you can see the whole entire thing, all the insert statements we're ever going to need. So right click in here, select all, copy, paste those insert statements in there. As long as I typed in everything right, it should work. And then if we type in select, da 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 da, from general power, you can see there is everything, and it is in alphabetical order, and it's wonderful, and we didn't have to think too much to create all that stuff. So that's really cool. Okay, so now I need to do exactly the same thing inside of code to create all my other insert statements. So let's bounce over inside of here, clear the scroll back, and I'm going to go schema, and let's look at identity and how it works. Now identity is going to be entering a secret identity, which is text, and the character's name, which is also text. So if we look at generate insert statements, we can see table name string, of course that's fine. This is a string, and this is a string. So that means it's going to work if I am entering the identity information as well. I just have to change a couple different things here. So instead of superpower array, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this altogether so it doesn't print that out twice. So let's come back up here and let's look at exactly what fields we have inside of identity. Now this is going to be superhuman array, which is what we're going to be pulling from. Come back down inside of here. So this is going to be superhuman array, and the guy or the table name for that is identity. So pretty easy to remember. And then this is going to be secret identity, and then this is going to be character. File save, and let's execute that, see if it worked. Run as. Looks like it worked to me. Yes, it did. Tony Stark, Iron Man, da 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 da. So I don't have to think about that either. Good. Copy. Bounce over into SQLite, paste that in. Select from, identity, like that. And there you can see all that information's inside of there, and it is perfect. So now we need to do the same thing again for the other two multidimensional arrays we have inside of here. Let's move this out of the way. Now this one's a little bit different because this is going to get a number, and then it's going to also get a description. So we can no longer use this generate insert statements the way that we're using it here. Let's get rid of this again and get rid of this. Alright, so I'm going to have to create a new generate insert statements. No big deal. Let's just copy this as a baseline. And I'm not thinking too much about this reusing of code. I'm just trying to solve the problem. Okay, so we got this right here. Now for this guy, what we're going to be doing is using this right here, which is specific power array. Come back down here, come in here. Specific power array is what we're going to be passing over inside of it. And actually, let's go and cut this out of here and put it where it needs to go, which is right here. There we are. And then also superpower tools is going to be used again. I'm just overloading this method. That's all I'm doing. Now what I need to do here is make it so that this is going to work with both integers as well as with strings. So how can I do that? Well, we're going to be putting in power, which is a reference to the power ID, which is an integer. Well, one simple way to solve that issue would be to pass along an integer. And I'm doing this like just out of my head. This is just the way I'm thinking because I think this stuff sort of helps. Well, actually this would be here. Comma true. Alright, so it's going to be true if this guy that we're passing in here is going to be an integer. And this is going to be power type ID, which we know that this is going to be an integer. This is just the column's name, but the actual data type for power type ID, if we come back up here again, you can see, even though it's set as a string, it's really going to be an integer whenever we create this information. So let's just let that be there that way. And just for the heck of it, I'm also going to copy this and do the same thing for the last part, because I may need this in the future. and power description is going to, in this situation, be false because it is a string and not an integer. So now I just need to create this actual method down below. No big deal. Copy it, come down inside of here, public void, generate this very specific information. This is going to be a string again, multidimensional string array. There we go. I'm going to call it the array just like I did before. This is going to be a string that's going to represent table name just like before. This is going to be a string as well, which is going to represent the first cell name. So I'm going to call that cell name 1 just like before. Then this, we're going to need a boolean, and I'm going to call this is int. It's just going to refer to whether the data that is in this very specific cell inside of the table is going to be an integer or not. And then I'm just going to copy this, come in here, paste that in, change this to cell name 2, change this to is int 2. Like that, and there we go. Now we have that all set up, and pretty much a lot of the code is here. So now I'm actually going to use a lot of the code out of this guy right here, the previous generated insert statements. And I know this is a little sloppy, but this is me trying to get something accomplished. It's not me trying to be slick. So we're going to come in here and we got to think about, okay, well, what's really going to be different? Well, pretty much the only thing that's going to be different are the values. We're going to have to decide if we're using integers or strings. If we're using integers, then we're going to want to get rid of this single quote. If we're using strings, we're going to want to use it. That's it. That's the only difference. So I'm going to change this a little bit, and I'm going to call this, or I'm going to define a string, and I'm going to call it insert statement. And it's going to be equal to this the whole way up to the point where we get to the quote, which we may or may not need. That's all we need here. Let's just copy that, paste it inside of there, close that off, and there we go. That's all ready to be used. Now we have to change everything based off of whether the data being passed in is going to be an integer or not an integer. So that's what we need there. So in this situation, I'm just going to say if is int, which means it's an integer. Well, in that situation, I'm going to say insert statement, like that, plus is equal to item 0, plus, there we are, else, if it's not an integer, then that means we need to have our quotes inside of this guy. So, no big deal, just come in here, and before the item, we're going to put the quote in. That's all. Pretty simple stuff. And then at the end of it, well, everything's going to stay exactly the same. And then I'm just going to copy this because I'm largely going to do the same thing again. The only difference is this is going to be changed to is int 2, and this is going to be changed to item 1, and this is going to be changed to item 1. Everything's going to remain the same, except this right here is going to be the closing bracket for our guy here. And guess what? This is going to be the same down here. That's it. That's all we need to change. Save that, and then what we need to do is inside of the print line, we're instead going to print insert statement, like that. File save, and let's execute it. So we just need to go in here and fix this part where it's putting a quote in there, but it's not putting the last quote in. Nice to make an error every once in a while. Proves you're human. So just come in here. Here we're not going to put a quote. Here we are going to put a quote. File save, execute, and now let's look at our data a little bit better. Yes, in this situation we have our quotes where we need them, and now it won't throw an error. At least I hope not. And just double check here with a select statement to make sure that power is empty. Paste in all my new insert statements, and now let's go and check to see if everything went in there properly. And there we can see that everything indeed did go in there properly. So perfect, 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 perfect. So now we're just left with one more of these guys, and then our database and all the data is going to be set up and wonderful. So this last one is going to have 3 integers inside of it. So we're not going to be able to use the generate insert statement thing that we created before, but we're going to be able to use something that is extremely similar to it. So let's come back up into this guy again. Generate insert statements. I'm actually just going to change this rather than going and deleting it and so forth and so on. Like I said before, the code is available in a link underneath the video. And here I'm going to change it from specific power array to identity power array. And then just change the name for the table to superhuman. And then here we're going to have identity ID, and it's going to be true because it is going to be an integer. Here I'm going to call this power ID because that's the name of the column, and it's also going to be true. Copy that, change this to power ID 2, and change this to power ID 3. Okay, so we have those all set up, and now we just have to create the new version of generate insert statements. Not that big of a deal, because for the most part I'm just going to cheat, and I'm going to copy the previous generate insert statements and just reuse it because it's going to work for me. I think that's the end of it. Yes, it is. Good. Copy, paste that in there, and then we're just going to have to change this up a little bit. Still going to be the array, still going to be the table name, still going to be string cell name 1, still going to be boolean is int, again. Only difference here is I'm going to need a couple more of these guys. which is going to be 2. Paste that in there. Paste that in there. And then I'm going to come in and change this to 3. Change this to 3. Change this to 4. Change this to 4 because we're passing in 4 integers. Everything else is perfectly fine. We're going to be creating an insert statement with values just like we have in the past, so that's all fine. The only thing that's going to really be different here is I'm going to need a couple more of these guys before I get to the final one down here. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to need 2 of these guys here to be specific. And then I'm just going to change this to isInt2, change the item to 1, change this item to 1, change this to isInt3, change this to 2, change this to 2, and then this is going to be isInt4, change this to 3, change this to 3. And I think that'll work. And the one problem is that we have 2 less power IDs than what we're going to need. And actually that's going to need to be changed to the cell name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I forgot to put those in there. No big deal. So I'm just going to come in here, cell name 1, grab this guy, copy, plus sign, paste it in there, cell name 3, and after that, plus, and then change this to cell name 4. Just going to copy that, paste that in there, grab all those, copy, and then also cut off this last part right here. File save it, execute, and everything is looking perfect. Just grab all those, copy, jump over into SQLite, paste it in, select everything from Superhuman, and everything looks perfect. So that is a whole bunch of things in regards to how to create tables and how to insert information into tables as quickly as possible. Please leave any questions or comments below. Otherwise, till next time.